Oh, Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me? Just give me 2 minutes. Hello. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Brilliant. So let us start, Maharaj. I think we have everybody who wanted to join.
Okay.
So
Just
if
give
you
me
start,
one.
so
Yeah.
this is our I think this is our eighth session. We missed 3 months in between due to various other engagements.
Yes, yes, yes.
And Maharaj, this is our eighth session. So over to you, Maharaj, on the Raj Yoga.
Yeah, just give me 1 minute.
মিস্টার চ্যাটার্জি, আপনি এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আমাকে?
হ্যাঁ শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
হ্যাঁ, আমি don't know what happened. I have now rejoined, logged out and joined again.
Hello.
I was actually telling everybody to wait, and I didn't realize that my voice is not audible. Yeah, just now he's joined back.
Yeah, yeah. I hope everybody can see me and hear me as well. Okay.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Okay. So we'll begin. Huh? Yeah. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Welcome to all of you. We are meeting after a very long time. There were so many gaps in between. So this is the 8th class, if I'm not wrong, the 8th session on
Right.
Raj Yoga, that is Swami Vivekananda's original work, or you may say commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Though it is a commentary of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Swamiji has given an elaborate introduction, which we discussed. And also, he has commented upon the sutras themselves, which is almost 2/3 of the book, but 1/3 forms his introduction. And that is very important because he has given a totally new perspective. Because, as you all know, yoga is one of the 6 philosophies, Shad Darshana. Actually, the word philosophy is not correct. We cannot say that yoga or Sankhya, Vedanta, these are not just philosophies. Philosophies are something which people discuss uh, in academically, they discuss, they can even get PhDs for that. And there may be several discussions and whether without practicing. Whereas in India, philosophy means the word, Sanskrit word that is used is darshana. Darshana doesn't mean philosophy actually, literally, because there is no other word. We say, okay, Vedanta Darshana, Sankhya Darshana, Yoga Darshana, Patanjali's Yoga is one of the 6 darshanas. And it is tagged along with Sankhya. So you all know that. The other 2, Vedanta, that is Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa, which are popularly known as Vedanta, are 2 aspects of Vedanta. But it is the Uttar Mimamsa, which is popularly known as Vedanta, which is very popular. The other one, which is based on the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, that is known as Purva Mimamsa. There are followers of that also, ritualistic people who do Vedic rituals. So these are the six systems, and of that, Patanjali's yoga is one. Though it is not just Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, because Patanjali was one of the compilers, or you may say, yoga existed long, long before Patanjali wrote these sutras. He codified them. That's all. So earlier, even before Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, the yoga as a darshana, as a not as a philosophy, but as a darshana, something which you can experience or realize in your own life. So these darshanas, including Vedanta and Sankhya, which is a companion of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras or Patanjali's Yoga or Yoga in general, Yoga philosophy or Yoga Darshana, they are intimately connected. Sankhya and Yoga, they are based on the same uh, theological, or you may say the same uh, framework, theoretical framework. So if you understand Sankhya, then you will understand yoga also. The idea of Purusha and Prakriti. We discussed all these things, but I'm briefly recapitulating because yoga as a darshana or Raj Yoga as a darshana was highlighted by Swami Vivekananda for the first time. He made Raj Yoga popular. Patanjali's yoga was not so popular in the West. It was Swami Vivekananda who we can safely say was the first person to introduce yoga in such a big way and make it so popular. Of course, now there is this International Day of Yoga on 21st June. We celebrated that. The world has accepted yoga, but unfortunately, as I said earlier, it is the first few steps of yoga which has been uh, which is very popular. For example, we discussed Yama and Niyama in our previous class. We just mentioned about them. We'll be discussing in greater detail when we take up the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So, to just briefly recapitulate what we discussed is the first two steps of Patanjali or first three steps of Patanjali. They are what is popularly known as yoga today. Of course, the first two people conveniently skip because they are difficult to practice. The most easiest thing, or the most, though it is significant, but not very important in the 8 steps. As I told you, it is known as Ashtanga Yoga. Patanjali's yoga is also known as Ashtanga Yoga. And Swamiji has given an elaborate introduction where he mentions briefly Yama and Niyama, but says they are the foundation on which the whole yoga is built. But because they are difficult, there are this Yama and Niyama we'll discuss briefly. Because they are difficult, people go to the third step. They just want to skip the first two, which is not a good thing to do. Otherwise, yoga as a darshana will not help us. It may help us as a philosophy, or it may help us to improve our health or improve our longevity and other things uh, physically. That is because asana, which is the third step, which is only the third step, which has been taken to be the most important part of yoga. And of course, there is pranayama, this is the fourth step. So then we have the other steps, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, which are the other 8 steps. So Swamiji, before he discusses what Patanjali says about this particular yoga or 8 steps, they will come in course of time. Though Patanjali begins with the main goal of yoga, which is chitta vritti nirodha. So he has defined yoga as chitta vritti nirodha. So that is the main definition and the main purpose of yoga. You cannot have the secondary purposes are no doubt important. They are all steps and they'll help us in various capacities. Asana will definitely help. But the main purpose of asana is to give you some kind of steadiness, physical steadiness, which will enable you to steady your mind. So if you want the mind, which is part of our subtle body, Sukshma Sharira, And we need to make the Sthula Sharira, uh, we need to make the Sthula Sharira, that is our physical body, steady. That is the only purpose. Thiram Sukham Asanam. We saw that asana is just important insofar as it allows you to sit steadily and practice dhyana, dharana, pratyahara, all the other things from step 5 onwards. They including pranayama, of course, but even pranayama is somewhat connected to the asana, because once you have a steady posture, which is asana, sthiram sukham asana, Patanjali will define what pranayama is. Very briefly, he doesn't spend much time. In fact, he spends more time on the yama and niyama, which we conveniently avoid or conveniently overlook and just start with asana. Now let us see what we discussed about yama. One is ahimsa. Ahimsa is that non-killing. Now, non-killing doesn't mean just not killing physical things. Even mentally, you have an attitude of hatred or violence. Even mental violence is considered to be ahimsa. So you may not physically be able, may not be killing someone, but you have an intense hatred and wish that that person somehow dies. So that's a kind of mental violence that we cultivate. So that is what yama means. In ahimsa means in yama. Yama, as I said, they are certain rules and regulations. There are the this is the first step actually. These are external observances or external controls. You have to control. Suppose you are tempted to kill someone, maybe even an insect. They say they go to the especially the Jain people. They go to extremes. They don't want to even kill insects. They think it's a type of violence. It's not just violence against human beings or bigger animals, mammals, and other things. Even the minute, the small insect, they want to avoid if they can. Even the bacteria, which is so difficult, we cannot practice ahimsa to that extent. But still, the Jains believe that as much as possible we should practice ahimsa, which is actually non killing, literally. Ahimsa means non killing, but there can be, we can even kill people mentally in the sense a tremendous hatred for somebody and tremendous wish that this person should not live can also be himsa. So it can be at the mental level also. Then we come to Satya. Satya, of course, is truth. Truth also, as I say, it can be verbal, it can be, you can write wrong things, that can also be untruth, because truth is not just spoken truth. Spoken truth is one of the aspects of truth, but trying to present things as they are not, as they are really not, can also be untruth. Trying to present things in a different way, which will uh, which will cause sort of confusion, and that type of untruth is also meant here. So satya doesn't just mean speaking the thought, word, and deed. That is why Sri Krishna always said that in this Kali Yuga, satya, to truth is the tapasya, to speak the truth or to hold on to truth of whatever form, mental, physical, or verbal, or even by thought. So that is second. Then asteya, non-stealing. Non-stealing is also, as we discussed earlier, very briefly, we'll see what it means. Non-stealing can mean many things. If a thing does not belong to you, and without the knowledge of the owner, if you use it, or if you just take it away, you don't have to steal it, but it can be uh, even if it is done inadvertently. For example, Sri Krishna's life, we see a wonderful example of this asteya. It had become part and parcel of his nervous system, so much so that he could not even touch anything if it was stolen. May not be consciously, even unconsciously, somebody steals something and brings it to him. That's why it is very difficult. we are very careful to offer anything and everything to Thakur, Sri Krishna. As far as possible, we try to ascertain what is the source of this. Is the gift that you are giving, I mean, offering that you are giving to Sri Krishna? Sometimes people think it is a superstition. Why are you so particular about people come, thousands and thousands of people come and offer certain things in the temple? It is very natural. We can't even try to find out what is the purpose of this donation or purpose of this offering. We just have to offer sometimes. But as far as possible, it is advisable to ascertain whether this is a genuine gift which the owner owns. It's his own thing that he's giving, he's not stolen it. So, stealing can be from taking things without permission also. So, that is the level to which Patanjali's yoga, the yama and niyama, are practiced if one is very sincere about spirituality. So, that is why we say when offerings come, one has to be careful and see the intention behind that offering, what was the source. So in Siram, because Siram Krishna's life, this thing happened. Somebody, one of the devotees used to go to a very rich uh, farm owner, and he had a huge orchard, and he was growing lemons there. So naturally he was a very rich person, and he requested Thakur to accept lemons from his farm. So naturally, one devotee was assigned and he would collect fresh lemons and use that for Sri Krishna. Now, it so happened that the owner of that farm on one a particular day changed. I mean, the papers were exchanged. The farm was where it was, and the devotee who had gone to uh, pluck those lemons from that tree, of course, with permission, with the owner's permission. But on that day, because the legal ownership of that land changed, Sri Krishna, the person went without any doubt. He just thought it is his normal routine. So he plucked some lemons and Sri Krishna could not drink that. He said, something is wrong. This is not, uh, I mean, have you brought the lemon from somewhere else? So that was the question. So it was uh, very confusing for the person, the devotee who had brought those lemons, because he said, I went to the same tree and plucked the similar, the same garden or farm. So he was not aware that the ownership of that land had changed. That means it was some kind of stealing. It is literally stealing because you have not taken the permission of that particular, the new owner, who might not agree to give his lemons to this devotee. So Sri Krishna could not accept that the lemons that this devotee had brought. So here, in this case, in an extreme case, we cannot even imagine that such a thing can be practiced by any human being. Because for Sri Krishna, these ideas of ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha, and all the yama and niyama that are essentials of yoga, Patanjali's yoga. In fact, Patanjali says after mastering that, or at least if you have attempted to master these yama and niyama, then you can start asana. All are not qualified. Asana is not just a physical exercise because the ultimate goal has to be kept in mind. The ultimate goal, which says the goal of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. So, if the mind has to be controlled, there are certain preliminary steps which are prerequisites, and yama and niyama are the first two steps of the Ashtanga Yoga, 8 steps. Third is asana. The fourth is pranayama, which are very popular. Asana and pranayama, practically people think it is the whole of yoga, but it is not, because the yama and niyama which we are discussing now, they have to be mastered to some extent at least before you even start asana and pranayama. But anyway, here Swami, this Sri Krishna's case, it is different because he could practice this yama and niyama literally, because all the ideas that we discuss now, they had become part and parcel of his nervous system. which Swami Shardananji so beautifully writes. So if we talk of asteya, non-stealing, somebody else inadvertently stole something and Sri Krishna could not consume. So you can imagine when we offer certain things without checking the background, it's likely that Sri Krishna would reject it. A lemon stolen, not stolen, brought from by a devotee from a orchard which had changed ownership only legally on paper. The same orchard, the same tree, the same lemons, but the moment he touched, he just he said, "No, I can't drink this. There's something wrong. You just verify." And that devotee had to go and ask the owner. Then he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I have sold that property." So the new owner had come, and this was known only to the owner, of course, not the devotee. But Sri Krishna somehow, because this idea was so deeply ingrained that I should practice this asteya, and it was not a theoretical desire that he had or just a wish that he had, but it had become part and parcel of his whole nervous system, which reacted. Similarly, we see in other cases also, Sri Krishna's life, it was very difficult for people to offer him anything. Even if the least tinge of these violations of Yama and Niyama were found, he could not tolerate them. His whole system, psychophysical system, would not tolerate it. But that is not possible for us. But at least to the extent we can, the idea is yama, which are external controls. See, yama are self controls by a person, by an aspirant who wants to practice yoga, he or Raj Yoga to be specific, Patanjali's yoga. These are the external restraints that are self imposed. You have to remember that these are not something they it has to be self imposed. One has to willingly practice them. It's not that it is some kind of rule or some kind of superstition that one has. It is a very logical way of saying that these external controls, which are known as yama, and niyama means they are internal things. For example, they are mental attitudes. You may ask what is the difference between yama and niyama. These five yama, which other two I'll discuss, but there are another five sets of rules, moral disciplines, which are part and parcel of Patanjali's yoga, which is the second step. So you may ask, yama, we understand there are certain moral rules, but they relate to our actions. Whereas the second niyama, they relate to our attitudes or mental attitudes towards. So they are known as internal controls. For example, santosha. Santosha means contentment. It is not something that you practice. It is an attitude that you adopt or an attitude that you have. If you are content, it is a mental thing. There's nothing physical about it. You have certain things. Okay, if you don't get it, whatever you get, whatever comes unasked, you just accept it and be happy. You don't strive, you don't mentally crave to get something which you do not possess just by uh, comparing yourself with others. So a person who does not have santosha, santosha is one of the niyamas. As Holy Mother said, it is one of the greatest virtues, spiritual virtues, because contentment is so difficult. We always compare ourselves with what others have. Whether we really want it or not, we don't realize. We don't consider that. But because somebody else has, so one is not never content in life. So whatever we possess, hardly we will find that the people are content with what they have. What they get unasked for, they just carry on with their duties without unnecessarily bothering uh, to acquire certain things. That is known as santosha. So this santosha is a mental attitude. Of course, it can have a physical aspect to it. Say, for example, you are eating sweets. You are not content and you eat one or two sweets and still you feel discontent and you go on eating more. That is, there is a physical aspect also to this contentment, santosha, but mainly it is the mental aspect. Are you mentally satisfied with what you have, or you always crave for something more? That is the idea. So that craving or that asantosha or the opposite will not enable you to focus your mind. Chitta vritti, the chitta, the more vrittis are there. So if you see if you analyze this yama and niyama, whether it is external control or internal control, you will find each one of them, this ahimsa, asteya means non-stealing, aparigraha, will come to that later. All these steps or all these disciplines, moral disciplines, somehow, if you don't practice them, it will lead to mental restlessness. If you have stolen something, for example, no matter that, it will definitely hurt your conscience. So there will be these waves of uh, thought which will disturb your yoga. That is the primary purpose of yoga, which is concentration of mind. Chitta vritti, to reduce uh, uh, the vrittis or the thought waves, so that you see your own self, you see, have a vision of the Purusha uh, clearly. That is the idea behind this yoga philosophy or yoga darshana. Because yoga darshana says that the pure consciousness or Purusha eternally has a tendency to get mixed, not eternally, has a tendency to get mixed with Prakriti, the changing world as we see it. And that, according to yoga philosophy or yoga darshana, is the cause of all our misery. It's as simple as that. So yoga actually means viyoga. It means separation of Purusha and Prakriti. Otherwise, all the things that happen in nature will impact. It impacts your mind, it impacts your personality, and the more the changes, the more restless your mind becomes. So it is a discipline. Yoga is a discipline or a darshana which enables you to practice chitta vritti nirodha. So that is the second sutra of Patanjali. First one is Atha Yoganushasanam. So now I begin the discipline of yoga, which clearly implies it is not a theoretical study. It's not something you can hear on YouTube or read in some books and then get satisfied that you have mastered yoga philosophy. Maybe, yes, that is good. Academically, you may uh, do that. You may have knowledge of yoga, but yoga Anushasanam, the first sutra itself, Patanjali is very clear. It is a discipline, a self discipline. It's not a discipline for somebody else, it's for one's own, uh, to reach one's own goal of life. It is a self imposed discipline. That is why they call it Ataha. Atha means now we begin Yoga Anushasanam. Atha Yoganushasanam. Anushasana means shasana is discipline. Anushasana means a discipline which has to be meticulously followed. So then he starts after that the first sutra, which gives the whole purpose and goal of yoga. It mentions that is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So what is the goal of yoga? If that is the goal, then all the steps, Ashtanga Yoga, all the steps, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, then Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and then finally Samadhi. These 8 steps, they have meaning only if we understand the basic idea that yoga means trying to reduce as far as possible the chitta vrittis, which is the result. What is the result of this chitta vritti? Chitta vrittis occur only when Purusha, a which is pure consciousness, our own self, the pure self, gets mixed up with the non-self. In Vedanta, we'll say it is Brahman and Maya or Prakriti. Prakriti is a Sankhyan word. In Sankhya also, they say Purusha and Prakriti. That's the philosophy of Sankhya. So anything that changes in this world. So, and because of that change, and mind is one of one of them, one of the things of Prakriti. Mind is also part of Prakriti. So when there are things, events changing, uh, objects changing, attitudes changing, our attitudes also change. And that change, according to Patanjali's yoga, is the cause of all our misery. That is why Buddhism, in fact, Buddhism does not believe in any concept of God, but they believe that this misery that you see is because of the changing nature. Of course, they give more focus to the mind rather than the changing prakriti around them, because he says we have very little control over what changes take place in the outside world. You cannot imagine uh, a situation where everything in the world outside of you, including the people and the objects around you, will be under your control. That is never going to happen. So, what can you control? You can control only your reaction to them or your mind, your mental waves. So Buddha says the misery, the source of misery lies in your own mind. So that is why they have this mindfulness meditation. So many Buddhist meditations, they resemble very closely resemble Patanjali's yoga. So yoga is an ancient school. Maybe it preceded Buddha because we have evidence that Buddha had Sankhya teachers, though there is no uh, mention of anyone who followed the path of yoga, because Sankhya and yoga were two philosophies or darshanas which were closely linked to each other. But Buddhism, definitely, Buddha, who was born as a Hindu, had many teachers. In fact, he experimented. He went to so many teachers. If you see his life, it is only when he was not satisfied with all the teachers that he had, he decided to fi- find out a path independently, and based on the knowledge that he had gained from his various teachers, he found that the root cause of misery is not in the world outside, it is in the mind. So how you react, how desires arise in the mind, how it make you restless, and how you react to the world outside, to the changing situation outside, and how it uh, disturbs your peace. This was the object of his study. There was no God involved. So he said, since it is my own mind that is causing this problem, I have to deal with it myself. So that is how all the different techniques of Buddhist meditation based on his teachings were developed for centuries. The same technique Patanjali uses. He says the Purusha, which is the eternal witness, the eternal consciousness, by itself is in a very peaceful state. But when it gets mixed up, identified with the Prakriti, the more the change, the more restless your mind, and more restless your mind, the more your suffering is. So that is, you may say, the Buddhist ideas of suffering and the problems of life and how to solve it through meditation are exactly identical to the Patanjali's yoga. But just as Buddha prescribes certain moral disciplines, you will find yama and niyama, five yamas and five niyamas, are highlighted by Patanjali as a prerequisite even before you attempt a study of the real yoga. Not the yoga that is popular now, but I am talking of the real Patanjali's yoga, for which he says yama and niyama are the first prerequisites before you even practice asana. Otherwise, asana will simply be reduced to some kind of exercise for good health, and pranayama will help you in that. So now we come to the aparigraha, non-receiving of any gifts. As I said, Sri Ramakrishna was very particular. If you see his life, I'm discussing this in the context of his life because according to Swami Vivekananda, it was he who really practiced all the four yogas, whether it is karma yoga, bhakti yoga, or jnana yoga based on Vedanta, or the Raj Yoga, which is Patanjali's yoga. He says, I found in my master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, a perfect harmony of these four yogas. Whether he did karma yoga, whether he practiced meditation, he was, you may say, a role model for everyone who wishes to practice this Raj Yoga. Though he doesn't say it in his book, which he wrote and which was published. First time it was published in London, because that is one of the first books, as you all know, which he dictated, and all others are compilations of his talks. And there are letters which, of course, he wrote. But other than that, this is the only original book which he wanted to leave behind as his permanent contribution to the West and to the whole world, of course. So, because there was so much of confusion, even in those days, yoga in some form had entered curiosity mongers, from different parts, theosophists and all those people. They had brought yoga. It's not that he was the first one to introduce, but he was the first one to explain what real yoga is to the West. And after that, of course, it became popular, but because it is difficult, people prefer only the asana and pranayama part. That is very easy. There are no rules, no regulations. This yama and niyama will take a lifetime if you see the first two steps. So that shows that if we're really serious about Patanjali's yoga, then it is definitely not a marketable item. There are so many yoga festivals going on, and people think it is so easy. You can pay money and do some asanas and do some. Even some of the Buddhist techniques, they don't go as deep as Buddha himself did. All the meditations, if you see, even in Patanjali's yoga, dhyana comes as a seventh step. What about the six earlier steps? People fail to understand that meditation is not such an easy thing. Buddha also emphasized mindfulness, Buddha also spoke of awareness, but see the moral codes that he insisted upon, the strict discipline that one had to practice. So it completely resembles this, completely resembles what Patanjali. Patanjali was, as I again repeat, he was not the founder of this. He might have written the sutras, but he had his own teachers. He just followed a very ancient tradition, perhaps more ancient than Buddha himself. So naturally, whether it is Buddha, whether it is Sri Krishna, whether it is any other incarnation or saint, when they speak of yoga, they speak of a eternally old tradition. Of course, based on the Vedas, because according to the Hindus, Vedas are the oldest extant scriptures. We do not know beyond that whether things existed, but at least for our historical purposes, we can consider the Vedas. So everything can be said to be derived, whether it is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga, or Patanjali's Yoga. They will have their roots. They will have their roots in the Vedic literature, the ancient scriptures of the Hindus. And based on that, even the philosophy or the darshan of Vedanta and other Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa. So, as I said, there are six divisions. So, yoga is one of them. Now, if you see this, why I am comparing, because I want to give you a comprehensive view that yoga, as it is understood and it has become so popular in the world, is far more serious stuff than what it is presented as today. And that is why it is imperative that we study Patanjali's uh, Raj Yoga, Swami Vivekananda's Raj Yoga based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I'm repeating this again and again just to tell you the systematic approach to yoga by Swami Vivekananda. This has to, because we cannot skip, we just can't go into the sutras directly. Otherwise, why would he write such an elaborate introduction? He wanted to clarify many things before he attempted to discuss the sutra one by one. Otherwise, there will be confusion. The sutras, apparently, they are very simple, and the way sutras are very brief. You know, the old Indian oral tradition, there were not many books. We did not have books. Books were not encouraged because they didn't want knowledge to be outside of ourselves. Every sutra had to be memorized. I told this many times about the wonderful oral tradition of education in India. They firmly believed that any knowledge which is not committed to memory and not part and parcel of your nervous system or the brain is not useful to you. It may be in books, but it will remain in books. So books have a tendency to a person who is pursuing knowledge with the help of books has a tendency to think that he has read everything, he has understood everything, and if he needs, he can refer to these books, which is outside of his own personality. Whereas Indians believe that is not how life transforming knowledge should be conveyed. According to the Indian tradition, the sutras were the small sutras, one line, they're very brief, very difficult to understand because they are very brief. There is not much explanation. So you need a lot of commentaries. But before anybody qualified oneself to understand the sutras, even with the help of commentaries, before getting admission to such a school, the ancient oral tradition required of the person to memorize all the sutras. There are 700 sutras, as you all know, in the 4 chapters of Patanjali's Yoga. So whether you understand it or not, uh, the same thing with other sutras. Panini's Ashtadhyayi, there are so many thousands of sutras. They have to memorize it and then get admission to the school because they have to be committed to memory and become part and parcel of your personality so that when you think of them, you can recollect them. Memory is a huge, I mean, has a big factor to play in our education. That is what uh, Patanjali, that is why these sutras, we have to, literally speaking, we have to commit them to memory first. That is why they are known as sutras. That is why they are very short. So that if you just recite the sutras over a period of time, if you have been uh, explained those sutras with the help of commentaries or some teacher, through some oral tradition, then there is a chance that you will get the spirit of those sutras. And they will be constantly reminding you because you have read what yama is, you have read what uh, the definition of ahimsa, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, then niyamas such as shaucha, cleanliness. That cleanliness is also an attitude, it's not just the physical cleanliness. So Santosha, tapas means austerity. Swadhyaya, Ishwar Pranidhana. So as I said, these 10 moral disciplines, they should not just be moral disciplines, they should, the definitions of these, which Patanjali will give, which we'll discuss as we proceed, you will find uh, he will try to define them so that you can commit it to memory. And once you commit it to memory, every time you do any action or any time you take some step, these verses will remind you that this is not what you ought to do. This is what you ought to do. Because these are yamas and niyamas. Now we can't take a book and when we are conducting our day-to-day duties, you can't expect somebody to take a book, Raj Yoga and or Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and see what does the book say. It's not like doing an academic study of science and technology where you have a manual, now and then you can refer. No, that's not, doesn't work like that. So that is why the sutras have to be committed to memory. In fact, when we studied in the training center, uh, if somebody wanted to study Gita, at least a particular chapter, it's impossible to remember 700 verses, but our acharya used to insist that you have to commit to memory at least this chapter, maybe 20 verses, 30 verses, 40 verses, and then come if you really want to understand the commentary on that. Because I'm not going to allow you to just look at the book and divert your attention. We are using it because since childhood now, we are using this social media and then books and then laptops and iPads because we cannot manage without it. Our education has been designed in such a way. Had we belonged to the old school, then we would not have required these books to remind us. We have now been habituated. For everything, we want notes, we want some kind of. So that shows that present system of education is not conducive to what spiritual education really demands. It demands much more a different mode of education. So it would be nice if we could memorize all these things, but we'll come to that later. Let us now take this niyama. As I said, shaucha means cleanliness. We discussed the uh, five yamas. One is remaining. We also discussed what brahmacharya is in the previous class. So we'll come to aparigraha now because that was what we concluded our previous class with that discussion on that aparigraha because it's a very difficult, a very sensitive thing. Now, what do you consider as a gift? If somebody gives you something full of love and other things, then is it uh, good to refuse that? Now, this becomes a very great moral dilemma. But Sri Ramakrishna's life, if you see, whatever you don't need, you don't keep. It's as simple as that. Even he accepted gifts, not gifts. He sometimes used to tell Master Mashai, who was not a very rich person, but he was, uh, Thakur liked to take things from him. So he said, can you give me, get me a dhoti? So he just wanted, he never used, he did not have a wardrobe full of clothes. So maybe his dhoti was torn. So he has said, can you get me a dhoti? So Master Masha was so happy. The Thakur always refused gifts. But here he's asking, so he was very happy and he brought two or three pieces, dhotis. He said, this is a good opportunity. And Thakur said, I told you to bring one. Why have you brought two? You take it back. So he refused to take. So these are some of the examples that we see in the life of practicing yogis or those who practice Patanjali's yoga, where non-acceptance of gifts can can be taken to any level possible. Whatever level is possible, Patanjali doesn't say you have to be uh, absolutely practice ahimsa, which is not possible. Though some people try to even avoid killing insects and small things, but you cannot prevent from yourself from killing microbes and other things which you are consuming every day. So there is a limit, but within the limits, one is expected at as far as possible to the extent one wants to make spiritual progress. But Patanjali has placed these yama and niyama in front of us. And then he says, now you do what you want. If you want, you can avoid yama, niyama, directly go to asana. You will get physical benefits, you will get a healthy body, but that's all. You will not get, you will not reach the goal of yoga. Or you may go to pranayama, it may help you in some kind of concentration because that is connected to the pratyahara and dharana, which comes later. So when you regulate your life force, when you regulate your breathing, and along with that, hopefully the other four pranas also come under control, and that may give you either a healthy body or a healthy, good health, or at least a favorable mind to focus on your tasks. That, of course, it does. It does. So that people, if they get some of these small benefits, they uh, practice these things. Nothing wrong in that, just to focus on the step number 3 and 4. But that is not the goal of yoga. That is what Swami Vivekananda says. So in this, he has given the whole list. We will come to that later. Shaucha, Santosha, we saw that. Niyamas, as I said, niyamas are some things that we do and there is some internal control. Tapas and Swadhyaya. Tapas means austerity. Now it has an external component also that you don't wear a sweater. There are people who in extreme cold, if you go to the Himalayas, they call it tapasya or tapas. Simply means, for most of the people, it simply means you try to endure as much as possible. You endure uh, uh, this not wearing warm clothes when you really need it and say that my body, getting my body used to this cold. I'm trying to train my body to get used to this cold with the help of tapasya. So popularly in Hindu thought, tapasya means or not eating. Fasting is also known as tapasya. I don't eat And maybe I make a big fuss of that, that I don't eat, whereas others are all eating. I don't eat because I'm doing tapasya, I'm fasting. So that is some kind of uh, external tapasya. But here it means anything that restrains helps you to restrain the mind. The mind says, now you go and eat. And you tell the mind, no, if you go and eat, it will disturb your yoga sadhana. That means it will disturb your pratyahara, prana, the other steps which you need to do. And then you cannot do dhyana. So that is the reason why you have to restrain yourself, not for the sake of doing tapasya. Austerity should not be done just to show people that you see how frugal I am, how austere I am. I don't do this, I don't do that. So it's just kind of self-praise. That's not what is meant. It means do restrict yourself from doing things which will cause some kind of disturbance in your mind, which is chitta vritti. The chitta vrittis have to be controlled. That is why they say if you are fasting and if you are always thinking of food, then it's better to eat something, not fast. The purpose of fasting is served only if your thoughts are reduced. But if you are fasting, say there are people who do this Ekadashi and they are just waiting when the Ekadashi is over so that they can eat. They are thinking of food. So the purpose with which tapasya or this fasting has to be done is not served. It's just that you don't eat so much that you find it difficult even to think. If you have noticed, if you after a heavy meal you feel like resting, so that's perhaps one of the purposes why fasting and other tapasyas were involved. That you refrain yourself from doing certain things because it disturbs your mind. It's not conducive to constant dhyana, dharana, and all the other steps which we'll come to later. So I think the time is over, though we started a little late. So if there are some questions, I think it would be better rather than going discussing more. Let us just. Oh, yeah, I can't hear you. Hello. Yeah, Prithvish, I can't hear you. I hope all of you are hearing me and seeing me also, are able to see me. Yeah, but
So
yeah.
I'm hearing you and seeing you. Yes, Maharaj, we are able to see you and hear you very clearly.
Okay, now if there is any question, you can just if somebody has typed, you can read it out or somebody can ask.
Maharaj, Pranam.
Yes.
I'm from Ranchi,
Okay.
Alpana Ghosh. I'm asking you a question.
Yes.
That you said aparagraha is means don't take any gift from anyone.
Yes.
And you gave the example of Thakur. That Thakur is accepting dhoti from
Yes.
CM.
Yeah, yeah.
How it cannot be? How
No,
it can
I'm
be
not saying you should
aparigraha?
not accept. Aparigraha means to the extent, see, in fact, none of these things we can practice 100%. But we should have a high standard. That is the idea. Thakur, if he was happy with one dhoti, if somebody gives us, maybe if he gives out of love three dhotis, and we really don't need you, so you can definitely tell him take the other two back. But we don't do. We just keep it. That's the idea. I mean, it's not that you can practice it to the letter. I mean, to the last. Not accepting, totally not accepting anything, it's not possible. In fact, these things are just, you should keep in mind that the idea of aparigraha is not for the practice of aparigraha. We are taking so many things from Prakriti. God does not charge us for the air that we breathe. How can we stop that? The water that we drink, we pluck certain fruits from nature. So many things we take, so we are accepting these gifts of God or gifts of human beings or our own parents. These are not. See, the thing is, don't. The idea of Patanjali is that don't increase. If you take too many gifts, then your mind will be occupied with them and some kind of idea that I have to return. I've taken so many things, so it's my duty. The conscience will tell you, oh, I have accepted this gift, now I have to do something and return that gift. So that just increases your, that affects your concentration. You will be thinking of too many things which you can avoid if you keep it simple. Okay?
Okay. Then that means we have to control.
No, you have to decide how much to take. That's what the
Yes.
essence. You have to be more practical. You can't say that I will never accept anything from anyone. Then it will be a little bit odd.
Mm.
And see who is giving it. What is the purpose of that gift? It should not be conditional. There are people, parents, they don't, normally they are not supposed to be conditional. They don't give things to their children as with something that they expect in return. Good parents, I mean. If they expect something, then it is different. So you have to be careful not to see through the intention behind the gift. If it is a very purely unselfish thing which somebody wants to give, that's why Thakur could take the gift from Master Masha, because he knew if he gives, he will give it out of joy, not out of some kind of obligation or something. Yeah.
Okay, Pranam Maharaj, Ratna here. I have a question.
Yes.
So in the morning we had this Bhagavad Gita class and we were discussing Daivi Sampats.
Mm-hmm.
And two of these, like the concept of Dhamma,
Mm.
is Yama Niyama the same as Dhamma?
No, it's slightly different. Dhamma and Uparati, they are all from Vedanta. Let us not mix, because that will be a very long discussion. They are also important. When you follow, Dhamma comes in, Shankaracharya has a set of rules or prerequisites before even you can practice Vedanta. You can of course hear about Vedanta, but when if you want to be a practitioner, then there is a person, there are a set of rules which make you a adhikari, one who is fit to practice Vedanta. So there, yeah, Dhamma and all come, Shama, Dhamma and all those things. Yeah. But let us not mix. That is similar, no doubt it is similar, but since these systems are different, we have to restrict. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. Pranam.
Maharaj, I know it will be lunchtime now there. I have one question is, this Yama Niyama that we have, they are so stringent that often for lay people like us, we get we get scared. So is Raj Yoga not for people like us?
No. It is, see, the thing is, as I told you, we can take whatever we can. You see, for example, there is a huge treasure and you have a capacity. For example, Thakur used to give the example. There is a mountain of sugar or a huge heap of sugar, but the ant can carry only one. So according to our capacity, we practice. That's why I gave the example of Sri Krishna. He is the person in whom the highest manifestation of this yoga was possible. But for us, it is not possible. And he himself said, if you do 1/16th or even less, but do something. That's the idea. It's obviously not possible. If you see the 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, or you take the 10 commandments, for example, any religion, they will almost speak the same thing. If you see Moses, the Jews and the Christians and Buddhists, of course, without any, you will find the same yama niyamas in different language they have been asked to follow. But all the followers of these different religions, they find it impractical to practice everything 100%. 100% is impossible, but even to some extent, if we can practice, that will help us in reaching the goal of yoga. That is the idea.
Got it. No, understand. Thank you. Anybody else has any question?
Yeah.
I just have a quick question on the committing to memory part when you were mentioning about one of your biggest.
Achha, there is one question, Prithvish. I'll repeat that
We can
question.
hear.
Yeah,
We
he
can
is
hear.
sitting in front of me. That's why. I'll repeat the question. Okay.
It was about the committing to memory bit
Mhm.
when we begin our studies. I was wondering, aside from the mental benefits which you outlined, is there a component, like a rationale behind that is that the student or the disciple also indicates that dedication to that practice to the teacher, that the fact that they're committing it to memory demonstrates their, I guess, dedication.
Commitment, yes.
Yeah.
So the question, Prithvish, I can share with those who are listening online, is a very good question that I just spoke of the oral tradition of India. And as I said, the sutras were made short so that it could be committed to memory. And whether oral type of learning also implies that there is some sort of commitment, that person is really serious. Yes, that is one aspect. Because if you commit to memory and the guru feels or the teacher feels that you are serious enough, then you will commit to memory. He will not ask you to commit to memory small things. Sometimes they are so strict, they'll say, memorize all the 700 sutras and then come. If you are sincere, you will come, otherwise, you will not come. So that's one way, as you said, of filtering out lukewarm participants, or lukewarm students who are just interested to study a little bit and then go, because there the guru feels that his time will be wasted. So that is one reason why oral tradition. Of course, everybody did not insist on committing everything to memory, depending on the students. You see, but it is a good idea. Our Bhagavad Gita class, which Ratna was referring to now, Swami Atmapriyanji used to insist a lot. In fact, he has committed so many things to memory. He is our pro vice chancellor of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University. So he used to tell the brahmacharis and the students, though that tradition is gone now because people are so much busy with and they have so many gadgets now, so you don't need to commit anything to memory. Even the phone numbers you don't commit to memory. So we have been so dependent now. But anyway, within this, if we just know that it is true, yeah, that is one reason. But the main reason is something else. The main reason is, one is to test your commitment. Second thing is the oral tradition, the knowledge or the memory of whatever you have memorized remains with you. So whenever you are walking, you don't have to carry your books. If it is in the books, then, or even if it is in your mobile phone, nowadays the gadgets are becoming smaller and smaller. So you can contain a lot of things. But even then, you have to open them, know where you have stored them, classify them, and find out, and then search for the reference. But if you have committed things to memory, it will help in the sense, it will help you to remind you when you are not in possession of these books. Suppose you have nothing in your with you. You don't have the books, you don't have the source like this. But still, from your memory, you can just go on and on. That's the idea. Okay? Yes. One more question, Prithvish, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Okay.
Is the yama and niyamas, do you only follow them if you're only doing Raja Yoga, or even if you're a follower for Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga, do you still follow yama and
Yes, yes. It's a good question. Now, the question is, do you have to follow this yama and niyama as given by Patanjali if you have to follow Raj Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga also needs this? Yes, it's a good question, but specifically this is meant for Raj Yoga. But if you see, all these things will be insisted upon. Just now, one Ratna asked that whether Dama, Shama, Dama, and Uparati, and there are Titiksha, that there are different terms used, similar things, but presented in a different way when you practice Vedanta. The system of Vedanta, as I said, is one of the 6 systems. So similarly, every yoga has got its own rules and own ways of uh, best practices, what you should do. So these are there, no doubt, but the terminology will change. So you cannot exactly think, because yama and niyama here, he has certain reasons why he has introduced this, because it suits the system of meditation, Patanjali's yoga. So when we come to the sutras, actually, you will find that everything has been defined. Now I just gave you a bird's eye view because Swamiji has given a small, Swamiji has just mentioned in passing. But when you go to the actual sutras, which will begin perhaps from the next class, you will find that every ahimsa, there is one sutra. So if you memorize it, you will find that it is connected to the next practice of Satya, Asteya, Aparigraha, Brahmacharya, Shaucha. You will find there is some intimate connection. So it should be specifically read or understood in the context of Raj Yoga. But in essence, it is true for other yogas as well. Okay. Yeah. So there are any questions from your side? From
I don't think so. There isn't, but these were two very nice questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking them.
yes.
No, we don't have any more questions from this side, Maharaj.
Yeah. Okay.
Then you can.
Yeah, if
close the
if some of you, those who are attending, it's just an announcement. If you need, I can post on your this thing. If you have a Tatpadam group,
Yeah.
you can share it with them. The previous classes also.
Yes, I will do that.
So 1 to 8, they are all on YouTube. It's a playlist. I have kept your classes separately from our Raj Yoga. We used to have Raj Yoga long ago. There are so many talks on that, but I don't want to confuse because this goes in a particular sequence. So if somebody wants, they can visit that playlist and see the previous talks. So that
I'll share this with them. Yes, I'll share this.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we
Thank you.
conclude now?
Yes, Maharaj.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ram Krishna Namastu.